Hello everyone, Guillaume Nesvana here, host of the E-Commerce Wizards podcast, where I feature leaders in e-commerce and business. Today's guest is Anna Taylor, head of marketing and e-commerce at Supply America, which is a national distributor all across the United States. We'll be talking about her testimonial, how it was to implement Adobe Commerce, formerly known as Magento Enterprise, and its total free speech, the good, the bad, the ugly. So you can hear firsthand from a merchant what it's like, why the platform was chosen, and we'll be talking shop quite a lot about all kind of details about running an e-commerce store for such a large company. Before we get started, here's our sponsorship message.
This episode is brought to you by MageMontreal. If a business wants a powerful e-commerce online store that will increase their sales, or to move piled up inventory to free up cash reserves, or to automate business processes to reduce human processing errors, our company, MageMontreal, can do that. We've been helping e-commerce stores for over a decade. Here's the catch. We're specialized and only work on the Adobe Magento e-commerce platform, also known as Adobe Commerce. We're among only a handful of certified companies in Canada. We do everything Magento related. If you know someone who needs design, support, training, maintenance, or a new e-commerce website, email our team at support@magemontreal.com or go to magemontreal.com. That's MAGE Montreal.com.
All right, Anna, thank you for being here today.
Absolutely, my pleasure. And I think I need to hire you for some of my promotions.
Would love to. So, Anna, can you give us a short 1-minute background about who you are, your career in marketing and e-commerce?
Yes, absolutely. It was nearly 15, 20 years ago where I was with a sporting goods company, and the CEO was the one who really put it in my head that digital was going to be driving commerce in the years ahead. And he really suggested that that's where I try to move my career. And I absolutely did. And I did some certifications, web design and e-commerce. Landed with a company based out of San Diego that had distribution in several states to stand up e-commerce, to really take hold of their digital marketing. Stood up a new website, a couple of different websites. Eventually, that company was acquired by the largest in the vertical, which is TriMark USA. And I then took the position to be able to head up the marketing in e-commerce nationally with sales. The company did sales around 2 billion. And we had multiple platforms and a very significant large back-end system. So it was a tremendous effort in that digital space with that company. In COVID, I stepped away from that company, but an affiliate company of that is Supply America, and they had the need for implementing an e-commerce platform. And so it was a real seamless opportunity for me to be able to move there. And that's what I've been working on since about 2020. And Magento was the platform. It's a bit of a name game right now. So you have what was Magento Community is now Magento Open Source. And then you've got what was Magento Enterprise, Magento 2 Commerce, which is all wrapped up now into Adobe Commerce, as well as the Adobe Commerce Cloud. So happy to really kind of talk about my experience with that, because I've been living and breathing it now for over a decade.
Awesome. Well, okay, let's get started then. The first step, obviously, any kind of rebuild like this, you were evaluating multiple platforms. And in your case, you made the decision to go with Adobe Commerce, formerly known as Magento Enterprise. So which platform were you considering, and what made you choose Adobe Commerce?
There's a lot in the decision making when it comes to e-commerce. There's some real base fundamentals. I mean, the number one thing is it going to support the company's growth playbook? Whether that's sales, engagement, subscriptions, lead generation, licensing software, reorders, B2B functionality. That's going to be critical at the top level. Then really it's performance, and it's going to be the speed, page rendering, a mobile first framework, the reliability, maximum uptime. You also need to know that you can optimize features and functions, the ability to customize, usability, the information architecture, navigation and search. Security is critical as a fundamental. The versioning, the having access controls, backup, disaster recovery, scalability, being able to upgrade, and also future proofing for the requirements of emerging customer demands, as well as kind of seamless third-party integrations. Um, Really effective data design is huge. And really then also that it's cost effective, and that it's going to have minimal maintenance requirements. So in way of just a baseline of the decision making, those are kind of the key factors I'm going to look at. Because the other thing that today, if I was to do a new implementation today, you have to see how much audience expectations are evolving. I would start by saying, like, they want rapid movement. And part of it is, as I spoke earlier, kind of that page rendering and being able to navigate easily through a website, the search capability. But there's a psychological factor too that you have to come into play. And that's what I call kind of the signals and familiarity. Because what you're aiming for your audience is comfort, confidence, as well as ease. The best example I could give would be like a restaurant. And when you go out to dinner, you walk in the restaurant, you're comfortable, you're at ease. And the reason is the familiarity of the environment. And you know when you come to the table, the fork, the knife, the napkin, the glass, the waiter's going to come up, greet you, ask you for a drink order. That all gives a psychological confidence about being in the environment. And it's really important that an e-commerce brand does the same thing. I think too, what's also becoming a very high level audience expectation is cross-device, cross-channel, cross-browser. I have to be able to be watching a Hulu show on my smart TV, turn that off to go upstairs for the night, turn it back on my tablet, pick it up where I left off while I brush and I floss, and then I can finish watching the show on my smartphone as I'm going to sleep. So that's become a high audience expectation. Personalizing the experience has become important, as well as the fact that they want the experience to be relevant, they want it to be valuable, they're looking for transparency, and that the messaging that the brand gives is very clear and concise. So as you're both looking at what you need as your requirements for the e-commerce platform, you also have to look at your particular audience and what those expectations are going to be. If you think about the audience today, you have to look at some really differences in preferences and behaviors. We have so many generations now that are in this digital economy. So you have baby boomers through 1964. Gen X is through 1980. Millennials through 1996. Gen Z through 2010. And now we actually have Gen Alpha, which is born 2010 and after. And while people might think, oh, I don't need to worry about Gen Alpha quite yet, if you think about it, the ones born in 2010, they're going to be teenagers in 2023. So they are literally within a year of being a teenager, and they are going to start having some buying influence with their families and with themselves. And with that landscape, there's really clear differences based on, if you think about Gen X and the earlier millennials, they're referred to as the digital pioneers. because really technology was evolving as they were growing up. But then your later millennials, your Gen Z, and of course, Gen Alpha, they're referred to as the digital natives because technology is fully within the digital economy through the time they were born and all the way up. And so it's really, you have to recognize that the behaviors within the digital economy are going to be different, generational. But I think that companies really have to understand that digital commerce and how and why they have an e-commerce platform and the investment that they're going to want to make into it is fundamentally, if you look at today's statistics, the most recent I saw, B2B sales in 2021 was 1.63 trillion. It was a 17% increase over 2020. That's a huge trajectory. Also, smartphone activities influenced millennial purchases 84% of the time. And that's just phenomenal. All of their activity on that smartphone is having that level of an influence on what they're purchasing. And then with regard to purchases overall, digital touch points are influencing over 50% of the purchases, whether that might be a website, a social channel, a video, a search engine, wherever that is digitally, those touch points are impacting purchases. So when it comes to especially my decision in way of Adobe Commerce, I look at it in way of the fact that I've got to be able to scale and I've got to be able to future-proof my platform. And I have to be able to bring the intersection of so many complexities together. So that may be the usability, the technical design, customer-centric strategies, data-driven strategies, kind of being able to bring all of these together for that user. Now, picking between the open source and then the Adobe Commerce, it bothers me and frustrates me when people talk about, well, open source is free. So yes.
The software is free, right? But you're going to have a ton of labor to put in.
I think it's so important to recognize, yes, you can download and install the code for free. Now you've got to look at the fact that you're going to have to configure, you're going to have to be able to consider certain modules that you're going to have to bring in that will be used above the basic functionality of the open source platform. All of the development and design costs, the extensions that you might need to be able to use, the hosting, and so forth. One of the bigger weaknesses I see with the open source is kind of that piece of security and scalability. That's very much where Adobe Commerce is so much stronger. Plus, the Adobe Commerce has the PCI compliance.
Right. And the PCI certification on Adobe Commerce, while on open source, it's only PCI compliant. So it's not certified, it's compliant open source and certified for the commerce paid version.
Exactly. So I think that's a key piece. Adobe Commerce has a lot of out-of-the-box functionality. And it's got some B2B functionality where you can have account management, you can have the multiple catalogs, price lists, order history, wish list, product recommendations, lots of tools within Adobe Commerce. So you've got their business intelligence dashboard, you've got customer segmentation, visual merchandising tools are available, advanced marketing tools are available, the customer loyalty with customer reviews. So lots of really great tools, lots of good extensions if you need additional capabilities. Like, for example, with mine, I had customers where they had very specific budgets month to month. And so if it's towards the end of the month, the customer, let's say it's a chef, is not able to place the purchase if they've exhausted that month's budget. But they really want to be able to kind of prepare products that they're going to be purchasing right when they hit the first of that next month. Well, instead of having to scribble that all down on paper, we gave them the capability to save carts so that they could put an entire cart together, put that aside, save that, and as soon as they're ready to make that purchase, they can open that cart, process it through, and that work is done. So that, that was one of the particular needs that I had with my customers. The other thing that they needed to be able to do is be able to download and share categories within the catalog so that they could have an exchange and an interaction with a colleague about the available products with the contracted prices within specific categories. So you absolutely have to be able
multiple employees in the same business that needs to collaborate to build a cart, or maybe one has the ability to add to the cart but does not have purchase authority, and a supervisor come and checks out for $100,000 or something.
As well as speaking to the distributors, because oftentimes you're going to have products that are configurable. So you need to be able to put those together. So instead of your standard request a quote functionality, you've got to be able to allow the customer to put items together in a cart that are configurable. And at that point, then be able to send that off and request a quote for those configurable products from the cart versus just downloading an Excel or a Word document with your list of items. So lots of different, capabilities like that. With the Adobe Commerce Cloud, then you sort of add the more advanced infrastructure hosting. And also you want to consider the Commerce Cloud if you're going to have multiple databases, because that capability is very much advanced there, as well as kind of if you're looking to do rapid deployment, that becomes really key. Because, in all the ways that you want to be able to meet the user requirements, where we are today, technology-wise, is really, I'm sure you've heard of the MAC architecture. So it's the microservices, APIs, cloud, and headless. Headless is really, that's sort of the foundational, where now we've separated, front end from back end. So it really creates an agility to be able to meet your customer demands, because you're able to work on your front end and do fast deployments without having to be held hostage with your back end system. But we've gone further from that. Now we're at modular, so that you break out the services. And so the APIs then allow for the messaging and the transactions to occur between services that can be operated independently. And that allows for even a higher level of kind of customization for the e-commerce brand. But the third generation of that has become the composable. And the composable really looks at an e-commerce being able to have those controls end to end, and be able to meet the business expectations at a very innovative and adaptive, pace. Amazon was really one of the first to look at microservices as the direction to go. And I heard a piece by the Amazon CTO, and he spoke of 2 pizza teams. And what that is instead of having an infrastructure team, you have these small teams working on these services individually to meet the needs of the customer. And the two pizza team meant that he wants the teams to be small enough that if you order two pizzas, it's going to feed the entire team. I love that because it really kind of gives you a visual of how you need to bring your teams down to really small groups to be able to work individually in the different services. And it was Gartner that kind of talked about that composability goes beyond technology. It's kind of for a company, it's more of a mindset, it's more technology and operational capabilities. So I think that companies today who are saying, okay, we either need to re-platform or we've got to advance our e-commerce or we've got to do a full new implementation. Those are the critical pieces to look at. You need to be in a tool like Adobe Commerce where you've got that capability to work within the different services in order to customize. I think the other thing that attracted me most about Adobe Commerce compared to, I looked at, Oracle Commerce, SAP Commerce, VTEX, Commerce Tools. All of these are excellent tools. They all should be part of the vetting that a business does.
Except Oracle now, because it reached end of life and they discontinued it. But yes, just as a side note, yes, agreed.
Fair enough. Fair enough. It was a while ago that I looked at that.
Yeah.
But also, Adobe has really great development tools. They have a full implementation playbook, an operational playbook, configuration, installation, migration, command tool, or command line tools, cron job management, search engine and cache settings, deployment methods. They really, there was never a point when working on the development that my development team couldn't go to their resources for that support. We always had that capability. So they really do try to offer a lot of support when you sort of hit those obstacles and those walls. But that's not to say you're not going to hit obstacles and walls. You always will, and your customers are going to make it very clear with what they like about working and navigating your website and what they don't like. There's lots of different ways to determine what that is. One is you can solicit feedback and you can, hear what they have to say about being on your platform. The other is they're going to tell you out of pure frustration. Another way is to heat map. And I find the heat map to be extremely insightful because you're going to be able to see where the gaps are. You're going to be able to see what do they touch, where are they clicking, where do their eyes go, how fast do they scroll down, and you're gonna know pretty fast what's working and what's not working. But the other thing I think brands today need to be doing, which I never really had to think about 5 years ago, 10, especially 10 years ago, are the emerging trends that are going to be very much a part of the millennials, the Gen Z, Gen Alpha. That's going to be the augmented reality, virtual reality. Just for clarity, the augmented reality, of course, is where you're taking the environment that the customer's in and you're adding digital elements to it. Whereas then the virtual reality, you're bringing them into a virtual space, a different environment. And you're seeing a lot of verticals today starting to embrace that. I know that fashion is really speeding up their embrace of virtual reality. You see a lot of the national type brands starting to tap into it. Interior design is taking advantage of it. Uh, but it really, I think it depends a lot more on the industry as to whether virtual reality is a
Yeah,
critical.
because it's still glitchy. It's still in the early days. Like for what it tends to work well right now, it's AR, the augmented reality, is stuff like furniture. So you can just look through your phone, and the
Yes,
camera is looking at your room, and then on your phone you'll see what the furniture would look like in your room because it's adding it on top as you look with your phone. So
yes.
that's what's working well right now. um, Floor replacement and so on. It works, but it's very glitchy around all the objects and so on.
It
So
is.
it's the early days, but it will keep getting better, and eventually it will be impressive what you'll be able to see as a complete room transformation, or even on a person. Like fit that dress to that person, you'll be able to look through your phone and just see the person dressed like that.
And
Eventually,
there's a lot of companies that are pushing the fashion technology hard. But as you know, and as I know, all these emerging technologies, they're always glitchy at the beginning.
yeah, but there's
And
better application in some case because the furniture is just like a standalone thing that just adds itself on the top. So that's why it
yes,
works better than, let's say, floor replacement that has to
yeah.
cut off everything in the room. So there's stuff like that. Another one that works well right now is it's called Modiface by L'Oreal. So you can see previews of makeup. So that's
Mhm.
working fairly well.
And also wearing glasses.
Yeah,
A
yeah,
lot of
that's
the companies
that's the other one.
are
And you
taking
see,
advantage.
that's the general theme. It's like overlays. So you have glasses. It's a standalone object that overlays. So that works fairly well at this point.
No, I agree very much that augmented reality has become more sophisticated faster than the virtual reality. And so I think we're going to see that becoming more and more mainstream.
Yeah, there's more
Uh,
commercial potential quicker on the AR side than VR
yes.
side.
But it's also like cryptocurrency. When I talk to people in my network and I ask them, are you getting ready to add it as a payment method? Are you thinking about crypto? Really, there's very few what you would call those first movers, the ones that are
Yeah.
going to jump in and make crypto. What I hear from my network is they say, something, I want to wait till my customer demands it as a payment method. And so they're waiting for it to become mainstream. I think sometimes when I look at cryptocurrency, I think one of its biggest advantages, which is the lack of the central authority, really also is one of its greatest weaknesses when it comes to digital economy. And that's why I believe that we see so much of that volatility with cryptocurrency right now.
Yeah, that one is a more tricky subject. It's a question like, do you want crypto as an asset in your balance sheet? Yes or no. So that's the first thing. Then there's like, how much do you trust it? Because yes, there's a lot of great things, but because it's not regulated, there's also a lot of bad things. And you've seen a few of the, like it was one of the stable coin that just like totally collapsed. It was supposed to be pegged to the
It
USD,
did.
but it totally collapsed. So there's
Yeah.
stuff like that. Once in a while, you have a super scam of I don't know what was that, Connects exchange platform. I forgot the name. Whatever. It's easy, I guess, to find on Google. But there was that big scam. So once in a while, you have a big scam. Once in a while, you have something that crashes. It's not supposed to crash. So it's a question: do you want to get on it or not? We can get very fancy on the discussion like macroeconomics. So at this point, like it can be a huge game changer, crypto later. But at
Yeah.
this point, for the developed countries, it's just an additional payment method. It's like you want
Yeah.
to offer PayPal, credit card, crypto, checks, the cash on delivery, whatever. It's just one more options in the list there, and you choose if you want to offer it or not, and if you want that kind of assets or not in your balance sheet. That's for the developed country. Now, if you have the developing countries, that's a completely different world because some countries PayPal
different tactics.
is not accepted, doesn't work there. There's a few rare
Right.
countries where even like MasterCard doesn't work, and very, very few. So it's more in the developing countries where you could have an insane opportunity of adding crypto because it might unblock things in a way that if you just unblock this, then there's an avalanche of stuff happening after. But for us in developed countries at this point, very little impact from crypto from what I can see. Later it might change, of course, but that's for now.
I think that, I mean, we've definitely gone into a lot of
Yeah.
the more significant emerging. But if I were to be talking with an e-commerce brand today, I think the thing that I would really impress upon them that I've simply learned through experience is having the ability to scale and to future proof so that there you can bring the new services in, you can bring the new capabilities in without it costing a substantial amount of money, or that you go 2 to 3 years with your platform and all of a sudden it's antiquated. All of a sudden you're in a position where it's okay, now I have to re-platform again, or I have to do a whole nother implementation. I think the critical thing is, as I told you earlier, absolutely understand what your business's growth playbook is. And then you look at what you're trying to achieve, whether it's subscriptions, licenses, sales, engagement, lead generation, and then ensure that you're future proofing when you're picking the right platform.
Right. So that's a lot to take in. It's so many fields to consider on so many things, the scalability, subscription, lead gen conversion. There's just
Yeah.
so much. So basically, fairly large companies, complex needs. If you need a customization capability so that the platform doesn't impose on you how to work. For example, Shopify. Some companies have very simple companies in terms of what they sell, like T-shirt, red, green, blue, small, medium, large. That kind of company could generate $100 million a year on a Shopify platform. But then as soon as you have a lot of complex needs for customization, how the business processes should be customized to really fit how your company operates, that's where on the other end of the spectrum, you have Magento or Adobe Commerce, sort of it's the total opposite of Shopify. It's two opposite platform, basically.
Yeah, I am not a Shopify Plus fan. And there's two reasons. One is, yes, you could convince a company that all you do is sell t-shirts. And so very simple, because for me, Shopify is so cookie cutter. It's the same look and feel. It's the exact same, open up to a product page, click add to cart, go to the cart process. And I believe that there's two negative components there. One is I think that as these younger millennials, Gen Z and Gen Alpha come up, they're not going to be interested in your real, just standard look and feel. They really want experiences today. You know, there's two things that kind of stood out to me as I was really studying the buying behaviors with the younger generations. One is they don't want to just click, they want to interact, they want to have an experience. And the second is they don't want to just consume content, they want to also contribute to content. And so I just would be concerned for any company, even if you say to yourself, hey, we're a basic company, we just sell these t shirts. That's really not future proofing. That's not really certain that you're going to be meeting the desires, the preferences of your audience 5 years from now and 10 years from now. The other factor with Shopify is the ability to kind of know that there are all these emerging technologies is going to be factored in. E-commerce really can't just be a singular experience anymore because of so many channels. You've got to consider the social selling, kind of your social channels and so forth. And you got to look at the other digital touch points. And now we have wearable digital and Internet of Things digital. Like there's so many different, and brands need to know that they have opportunities to attract their audience and bring an e-commerce transaction into fruition in a lot of different ways. So if you sort of settle for Shopify and you're held to them as the vendor, I just really would be concerned that the brand isn't looking outward.
Right. And there's one more concern like this. It was shared by another guest on our podcast that, the big problem they had, even though they're an authorized Nike distributor, they got just like blacklisted, and then they had that whole legal thing going on, and they cannot sell Nike on their own store, which is annoying. I mean, they own their website, their .com website, but Shopify can impose things like this. So for sure, with Adobe, there's a license sure to pay, but it's your own website, it's your own software. Like you bought it, you own it, you do whatever you want with it. So there's the question of ownership of what you build on. There's a question here. So Shopify, it's more than just I'm paying a license for a software. No, they can also impose you stuff on your .com, which is not right by my standard.
They own you. They own you.
Exactly.
Now, one thing I would want Adobe to do is rethink their pricing model. So
so that's good, because like we've talked a lot about like the choosing the platform, marketing, and we went all over the place in the industry, which is fun. And now we can talk about it. Okay, the good, the bad. So like, okay, let's talk about the pricing model. Let's
okay,
get into
so
the bad
I don't
here.
like the sliding scale for the gross sales revenue. And unless it's changed recently, I'll just go off the numbers I know. So if you make under $1 million, then I think annually you're looking at 22,000. And then at the other end of the scale, if you are 25 million or higher, it's 125,000 annually. Well, if you look at that, you've got the under $1 million, it's 2.2% of their gross revenue. Whereas for the over 25 million, it's 0.5% of their gross revenue. So why impede upon the smaller company with 2.2% versus the much larger enterprise at 0.5%? I just think it needs to be here, like 1.5%. Boom. That's going to be, the fee. So it just allows for a more fair
playing field. Okay, I see what you mean. That's an interesting point of view. I guess they have more like a baseline that they want to be sure like the fee is at least this much per customer with the support, the hosting, and everything. So of course, someone with a lower yearly gross volume, it makes a higher percentage. But I totally see your point there.
Yeah. That's one of the factors I'd like to see. And then I'd like them to consider on some of their pricing of the extensions. They're having a little bit too much fun, kind of rising prices on the extensions that you need to bring in. And so there's that factor. The third would be, and I'm really speaking kind of across several platforms, we have got to get search, on-site search, not Google, on-site search. Boy, we've got to do a better job with that. I spend so much time having to teach my search platform how to be better giving the right results to my customer through synonyms, through natural language terms, through misspellings. Boy, misspellings is a fun one. And we are at a place with AI and machine learning today. Now, I know that there is Adobe, is it Sensei?
Sensei. Well, pronunciation, I don't know if I'm right too, but Adobe Sensei.
I know that the word
intelligence module for
stands, it's Japanese for master.
So, exactly.
And I know that it integrates with their product recommendations. It integrates with the e-commerce, or sorry, the Experience Cloud, the Adobe
Yeah, and
Experience
it
Cloud,
integrates with all
and
Adobe's products,
all of the
everything,
Adobe
including
pieces.
commerce. Yes.
But they've got to get, and it also works with the live search. But there's still, the problem is that every industry search terms are unique to the vertical. And, for example, you can have a waste container, trash can, and garbage, container. Like all three means the exact same thing, but people are going to search for it in different verbiage. And so I just think all tools, all e-commerce, they have got to put more attention to allowing for search to be a smarter tool.
Agreed.
I mean, if Google can do it, I mean, come on, guys.
Well, that's not 100% fair. Like a $1 trillion company that, Google has the whole internet in their RAM memory of their servers, which is completely insane if you think about it. So
Some pretty big servers.
It's not a fair. It's not even David and Goliath. It's the ant and the giant. But I agree with you that the search on e-commerce websites and on Magento Adobe Commerce is one of the weak points. Totally agree with you. There was the regular search, then they came up with Elasticsearch, which was the same relevance, but was way faster. So you had 1 million products. You could search 1 million products, have no timeout, have quick result, but relevance was not better. And now they came up with this new live search, which is the AI from Adobe Sensei. I don't have extensive research at this point, like how much better it is in relevance
I don't
and so on. But they know that it needs to be improved, and that's why they released recently this new Adobe Sensei thing which is called Live Search, to keep improving this. But I hope they will keep improving it way more, because yes, search is actually a very difficult problem to solve. It's surprisingly difficult, and it is a much smaller scope of work than, let's say, Google. So here they need to just keep investing there, and for all platforms, yes, especially Adobe Commerce, they need to make this better. Like it works, but it's a lot of work to make it work.
But they've done a very good job with what I call the site admin, meaning the back end of the platform where I can work on my user interface experiences. They need for there to be a very user-friendly capability for me to pull my logs up of the searches that took place on my website on any given day or any given week, look at the number of searches, look at the terms that people actually search by, what those results were, and allow me to very quickly add synonyms, add misspellings, add redirects to particular products and so forth. They just need it I need to be given an interface where I can just regularly optimize based specifically on what my customers actually search, not what I'm guessing that they're going to search, but the real searches that take place. And that one of the struggles that I had too is I would have a particular product number of an item, and it would be in this category here, but I would also place that same product in a different category because it was actually relevant to both. Well, the problem is I would have search results and it would be duplicated. I would have that same product coming up. And so I had to do some custom coding so that it would only show the product once. I also had a challenge that sort of went head to head between product hierarchy and most relevant product results. So we had to tell the code which took priority. Would it be that we had a particular selling strategy so that we wanted to create a hierarchy for the product, or we want the customer to get the most relevant product based on the search that they did? And so to meet that query, and that really became a business decision.
Yeah, it's a tough one. It's like, do you let the algorithm decide, or do we as human decide? And what we've decided, is it relevant in all cases? And what about synonym? And how far can we go that it's the human decision that overrides the AI, or AI should override the
Yeah.
human? So yeah, it can become tough. But you're totally right. Search, they need to keep improving this. Totally agree. It works. It's a lot of work to make it work. So,
Yeah.
what else? If we're in the bad, like, okay, we want this to be a balanced testimonial. Not that Adobe is the best thing, Adobe Commerce is the best thing ever. It has a lot of amazing strength. That's why it's the platform we sell, obviously. But let's keep digging. Like, what else is like the weakness of this platform?
I think that the handling of data is still an evolving process for any sort of e-commerce platform, especially when you're talking multiple catalogs across, multiple accounts, where you're going to have different users logging into the account, needing to have different experiences, maintaining their own, favorites lists, maintaining their own saved carts, the manipulation of data. Because what you have to think about is that sometimes a product becomes no longer available, so it's been discontinued or the inventory is run out. Well, what happens if I have that product in a saved cart? Because until that cart opens and that data becomes active, how do we ensure that the customer doesn't think that that product is still available? Because that's been put into a particular, compartment. And so
It's
the
supposed to have a
having,
validation. It could be a bug if it doesn't do it. Because it's supposed to be
yeah, but
validated at each customer visit if there's still inventory or not. Because yesterday maybe there was stock, maybe today there's no stock.
right, it's not a problem within the live cart. Our struggle was in the saved cart because it's not dynamic in the saved cart.
Okay.
Once you update your database and the dynamic data updates, you're fine. But the struggle came for us was within the saved carts.
It'll have to be checked. Okay, good point. Safeguard. I don't. It should have a dynamic update. If it doesn't, well, I guess it would have to be coded. Okay, I'm not sure about this on a live like this. I have to double check. Okay.
Yeah. But
Anything
it's just
else?
that there was a lot of complexities that we needed to meet for the demands that the customer had, being able to access multiple accounts, but we didn't want them having to log in and out. So we had to create a landing page that they would come to, but then coming into the landing page, they needed to be able to go in and out and not be working off of one shopping cart or one wish list or one order history. So the structure was definitely something we had to do a lot of work on. But
Sounds good.
Adobe met the needs. We were able to get there.
Yeah, it sounds like a very complex need, regardless which platform you make it. Only
Yes,
those super flexible platforms could ever accommodate this.
yes.
It's very, very flexible. Okay. Anything else top of mind about the downside or weakness or struggles while implementing the platform or using it day to day?
No, I mean, the implementation and the launch went very well. And anytime you launch, there's always going to be a few, glitches, issues that you've got to contend with. But of the implementations that I've done for many years now, I took a deep breath because it went well, and we were able to kind of meet those needs. I think the biggest thing was that for the interface, it became clear there was some messaging that we needed to provide for our customers in particular instances, but really nothing in way of the functionality.
So yeah, even companies like Apple or Microsoft, they do a new version release. They have an army of testers, and there's still a few bugs that slip by. So that's just to set expectation. There's always some bugs. What's important is your supplier, how fast and efficiently do they fix those bugs once they're
Yes.
after the
And
quality
it's
control and the go
important
live.
that they're really ideally you want four environments. You want to have your development, your QA, staging, and production.
Yeah,
And
that's the ultimate setup. Like if you go all the way to
yeah,
4, that is ultimate.
but it always comes
3
down
is
to
also
cost.
very professional. If you go to 3, just like
I know, but
but
I
4
love
is
four.
the top setup. Yes. Okay. You like to have the best setup. That's awesome. I agree with that. Okay. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Okay. And how long was the build phase to create this platform, this product?
It went about a 9 to 12 month, where the majority, I mean, we had the interface done after about 6, but then we really had to work on the back end, the setup of the databases. We had data coming in from different distributors. We had to figure out how we were going to have that come into the back end system, go back up onto the Magento platform. There was a lot of pieces because then we had EDIs that were, passing the data back out to the distributors and so forth. So there was complexities there that we had to work through, but it really we kept the cadence moving, and we were able to. I think we took a conservative approach at the end, where we also the audience, the customers had been on a platform that they had been utilizing for a long time. So we really took almost a 30 to 60-day window of my doing just back-to-back demos and trainings because we had a wide group of different customers, so they would bring the users together, and I would then hold those trainings and walk through all the capabilities that they now were going to have, because they were going to have a number of new capabilities that they didn't have on the prior platform. So we definitely took kind of that cautious approach of don't just, okay, we're done. And so, launch. We wanted to give people the time to understand what it is that we're going to, when they come up to that Monday morning and we go live, that they're not kind of, freaked out.
Right. And the go live process, you remember a little bit in the detail how it went? You like put the landing page, your site, and sort of it's down for how long until the new one's launched?
Yeah, it was really a Friday through Monday. And so it was a process, where the IT team, put the page up. So there was no more ordering for about a 48-hour window, uh, making the changes, moving off of staging, bringing everything into production. And then we just did wild testing for an entire 24 hours to ensure that everything was working properly. And then we were live.
Cool. It's a smooth process. I like that. So it's long
Yes,
enough,
it
like
was.
48 hours is a long process. So it's a smooth process when you give yourself the time to do the work right and to take your time and go live smoothly. So okay,
Yes.
that's pretty good. So you've talked about the selection of platform, a little bit of everything about the marketing industry and so on. We've talked about the a lot of the good about Adobe Commerce, flexibility, the power, scalability, the composable commerce, which is a new thing, and everything that is headless separation of
And
true
the
separation
and
of
the
front end and
Commerce
back end.
Cloud. Mhm.
Yeah, exactly. So we've covered a lot of stuff here today. Is there
Yeah,
anything else top of mind that you'd like to cover?
I would say that the most important thing is that you really want to enjoy the process and ensure that the team that they're ready to pivot when you hit the obstacle, when you hit that spot. You come together as a team and collaborate when there needs to be that decision making of a particular function or how you're going to feature something or how the customer is going to interact with that. It's good to have some customers that you could turn to be able to get their feedback even while you're in development,
Yeah.
so that you can bounce that off of them. And boy, every once in a while, people give you perspective and it's just not in your own wheelhouse.
Yeah.
And so if you kind of open yourself up to be able to hear from other people and hear from your developers and hear from your designers, I think that if I look at implementations I did, 10 years ago, it was just more of a checklist for me, and I was just like, okay, I need to have this as part of the interface, and I need to have this as part of the functionality, and this is how the data is going to transmit and so forth. And whereas now it's really you've got to be in a space where you're very flexible and you've got to be able to hear a lot of different input in order to kind of make those right decisions, but be prepared to iterate and be prepared to test the direction that you go in. You can create a feature or function, but test it and make sure it's designed so that it's intuitive for the customer and that it really does meet their particular needs and their preferences. Because again, like I said, the nice thing with digital is you're going to be able to tell. You're going to know that a landing page is successful because you'll see that they click, you'll see how much time they spend on the page, you'll be able to see if they convert. But boy, when you get it wrong, your
Yeah, it's
customers
a
tell
lesson
you.
in humility. They say, okay, we messed up. That's not selling at all, but it's the fun thing with digital because you have full traceability of everything, which you didn't have back in the paper days and
You
billboard
didn't.
days. There's the famous quote out there about some billionaire saying, I know that 50% of my advertising works. I just don't know which 50%. So that was back in the paper days, So nowadays you
Well,
would
and
know exactly what works or doesn't work.
I like the 10 years ago because I used to think I was just so awesome at what I do. But now today, the audience humbles me
Yeah,
because
we can say, oh, this is awesome. My work is awesome. But then, okay, you're going to have real numbers to back it up or to say the
exactly.
opposite, actually, that this needs a total remake. And it was a hypothesis that you've then tested in a more scientific way. Does it convert? Do people like the messaging? Do they buy? And so on. So,
And
yeah.
that's why you have to be agile and you have to do what's called hypo tempo testing, where you test and it's okay, it's that fail fast, mentality.
Yeah.
So okay, this landing page didn't work, boom, we move
Next.
over
Yeah,
and we
next,
create a new
next,
one.
next. So it's always a process. You have new ideas, you
Yeah,
test them out, works, doesn't work, see what sticks, and just keep going all the time.
yes,
And I like one of your other suggestions before to test, sort of just with a few customer. Here we call this a private launch. So when it's ready to go live,
yes.
you can test with 2 or 3 clients that you have a great relationship with, that they're willing to use the site for real with some of their users, place some real orders because they're regular customers or something like that, and then you can have real customer feedback before the public launch.
Absolutely. Yeah, very valuable.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Anna, for being here today. You shared lots of knowledge and insights. You know your stuff. So, if
Thank you.
people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
I've got a website, artofdigitalcommerce.com, and a blog, which is my name, annaktaylor.com.
Awesome. Thank you, Anna.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.